Sita stood looking into the back of the wagon for a long time. So long that the boys grew nervous and fidgety and began shuffling from foot to foot, then hopping, then holding hands and doing a kind of jig, wholly involuntary and instinctive, until Nakhudi turned and gave them the full benefit of one of her formidable glares, which stopped them short. They stood with slumped shoulders then, though the overly beatific expressions on their faces suggested more than a touch of mock innocence. What? We? Never. She controlled the urge to cuff them on their backs, knowing it would only make them whoop and cough with pretended pain, while actually laughing. They were boys after all, though when watching them in a pitched fight, it was hard to remember that. She was certain their opponents didn't care, which only made their exploits that much more dangerous. Only a matter of time, she thought in dismay, before they meet their match. Mate protect them both. Finally, Sita let the burlap flap drop and turned away. She put her fists on her hips and looked at the boys. Their innocent wide-eyed expressions deepened to the point of self-parody. Well, Vedvati said at last. This time you've really gone and done it, you two. We were just. Shut up. Taking back. Be quiet. Rightfully ours. Hold your tongues. We thought it was. Silence, you scamps. Another Vaishya grama with grains. I said. Need food desperately, then near starvation and. Enough. Vedvati's voice cracked like a whip, making even Nakhudi wince. The boys held their tongues this time. Their mother moved closer, facing them directly, hands crossed firmly across her chest now. Nakhudi saw from the faint flush lightening Sita's neck and lower face that she was really upset this time. It took a lot to upset Sita. She swallowed, wishing she could slip away and leave mother and sons to sort out the matter on their own. She was dreading the moment when Vedvati would realize that Nakhudi had known about the boys' antics from the time of the very first wailing. She glanced around, glad that the boys had been wise enough to hide the stolen wagon in this remote hollow deep in the woods, where there was nobody to see and hear. She had not even been able to bring herself to think about the consequences that awaited them once the survivors of the wailing reached Ayodhya and reported to their superiors there. Sita brought up that very issue just then. Do you know what you have done? Vedvati asked her sons, the color rising in her face for the first time in weeks that Nakhudi had seen. You have transgressed against the authority of Ayodhya. Do you even understand what that means? The boys looked up at their Matra, their big-eyed innocent expressions slowly fading as they saw just how angry she was and how much effort she was putting into controlling that anger. They also saw what Nakhudi saw, that she had already flashed past her ire at the boys for their youthful waywardness to the larger issue at hand, and that observation deflated any further attempt to appeal to her maternal affections. Nakhudi explained it to us, Kush said, looking down with his head tilted awkwardly, as young boys will do when they are discomfited. We broke the law, she says. But we didn't know that. We thought we were just taking back what was the people's. Honest, Matra. Yes, Matra. Love chipped in, looking as disconcerted as his twin. Vedvati glared at them both in turn, showing them what she thought of their understanding and misinterpretation of the law. But aloud she said, they won't let this rest. That's for sure. She frowned, thinking, you say you wailed this grama just this morning. Both nodded vigorously. Sita looked up at the rock walls of the hollow, turning around slowly as she thought for a moment. The torch in Nakhudi's hand threw flickering yellow light up several yards, illuminating the overhanging broken rock walls that leaned together to produce the empty cave-like hollow where the boys had brought the wagon. The hollow was at the rear of the very outcrop near which the boys had stopped and robbed the vegan grandma, although one had to know it was there or one would never find it easily, even though it was literally within stone's throw of the Rajmarg itself. The choice of hiding place was as ingenious as everything else the twins ever did, but Nakhudi doubted whether that would help them much if what Sita feared came to pass. That means they ought to reach Ayodhya in 3 days, maybe even 2 if they travel fast. She flashed them angry looks, the torchlight reflecting in her dark eyes and giving her an unmotherlike aspect. But more likely they would have sent a rider ahead to give Ayodhya the news of the wailing, in which case, he would reach Ayodhya before nightfall tomorrow. She mumbled something incoherent that Nakhudi sure was a curse. Doesn't give us much time. Much time for what, Matra? Love asked in some puzzlement. Nakhudi glanced at them both, the torch sending their shadows fleeing as she turned it towards them. Both boys looked more concerned about their mother's stress than about any anger she might display towards them. They still don't fully understand the implications of what they've done. Sita looked at them and shook her head in disgust as she came to the same conclusion. She sighed and said, to try to make amends. Kush looked at his brother. How, Matra? Sita gestured at the wagon. Only one way that I can think of now, unless you have a better idea. This last she tossed at Nakhudi, who shrugged, then shook her head. Sita nodded and raised her hands in the universal gesture of despair. Then, there's only one thing we can do to try and make amends. We have to give this back. At once. That means taking this wagon back to Ayodhya and delivering it to them with a full apology for your actions. Kush and Love stared at their mother as if she had suddenly sprouted a second head and spoken in voices. What? They said at exactly the same time, in the exact same tone of shocked outrage. Sita looked at them both with her hands on her hips. Well, smarty boys, what would you have us do, then? Love shrugged. Kush imitated him. Why not just keep it? Sita raised her eyebrows at them, then turned to Nakhudi. Of course. Why didn't I think of that, right, Nakhudi? Why not just keep it? She laughed a semi-hysterical laugh that echoed oddly in the enclosed rock hollow. Nakhudi glanced around nervously. She didn't like being in a place like this, with only one ingress, in the jungle at night. Even the military grandmas avoided passing through this neck of the woods at night. Panthers, boars, lions, wolf packs, snakes, you could take your pick of predators on the prowl. The Valmiki Ashramites knew better than to venture even to the edges of the light pools thrown by the ashram lanterns at night, and despite their extreme caution there were always incidents. She hoped Sita would keep her voice down to avoid attracting undue animal attention. Sita shook her head in despair, walking several steps to and fro before turning to say to the boys, Do you know what you stole today? Do you even understand? She went up to the back of the wagon, hopped up on the rear steps, and twitched the flap open with a single flick of her wrist, sending the flap over the top of the wagon where it fell with a heavy rustling sound. Nakhudi hefted the mashal, raising it up to throw some light into the back of the wagon. Standing that way, her feet slightly apart, one arm raised with the torch in hand, reminded her vaguely of a statue she had seen somewhere in her many travels that was sculpted in an identical pose. For the life of her, she couldn't remember where or when. Then again, perhaps she was only wistfully wishing someone would sculpt her in this pose. Yes, sure, she thought sarcastically, the great lady with the upraised torch, casting light upon the ill-gotten gains of theft and brigandry. This, Sita said, gesturing at the wagon filled with massive chests thrown open earlier by she herself when examining the contents, is a war wagon. The treasure within the chests, for it was nothing less than a treasure, glittered, gleamed and shone as the gold ingots, silver bars, coins, gems, and other precious items caught and refracted the light from Nakhudi's torch. Tribute collected to finance Ayodhya's next war. Nakhudi nodded in agreement. She knew enough about the inner workings of a kingdom to recognize a war chest when she saw one. This was no mere tithe, lagan, or other kind of tax. Only a royal tribute could be this rich. And protected as it was by such a heavily armed contingent of PFs, Ayodhya's elite regiment of royal guards, a war wagon was the only likelihood that presented itself. Literally a wagonload of wealth to be used to pay for a major military offensive, which begged the questions. What war was Ayodhya planning to wage? Against whom? When? Nakhudi had no answers to such questions. Hell! She didn't even want to know the answers. She wished fervently now, as she had that morning when the boys first brought her here to show her their rich pickings, that she had never laid eyes on that goddamned wagon. Sita turned back to glare at her sons, black pupils flashing darkly in the torchlight. The penalty for stealing a war wagon belonging to Ayodhya is not mere imprisonment or a penalty. It is death to one entire family, on grounds of treason. Nakhudi watched the boys' faces lose every last vestige of youthful brashness as the full implications of Sita's words sunk in. She felt sorry for them in that moment. This time, they had truly bitten off more than they or anyone else could chew. They had just sentenced themselves and their matra to certain death. Now, no matter what any of them did next, their crime was beyond forgiving. Except, and Nakhudi drew in a deep breath, the arm holding the appraised mashal shaking slightly, except by a king's pardon. And that, she thought, looking at the sons of Sita as they absorbed the crushing blow of the implications of their boyish transgression, was as unlikely as the moon lighting up the world with light as bright as sunshine.